Thank you very much, Anya, and thank you everyone for signing up today. I'm going to be asking you to think about a few questions. So really the first one, as it says on the slides, is how green is your money? Do you even know what is happening to your money? Are you aware? Are you happy with that? Do you want to do something about it? And if you do want to make your money greener, where can you go? I'm just going to start with this quote from David Attenborough. What humans do over the next 50 years will determine the fate of all life on the planet. So we all know that we need to take action on climate change, and we may have started to change our behaviour, but we don't often think about the power of our money and how that can affect change in relation to the climate. And really, over the last 20 or 50 years, that has worked in the favour of the big banks, and they've capitalised on that inertia. And what we're faced with now is really a disconnect between the financial services market, which is leading us down one path, and the planet, which needs us to go on a different journey. Obviously, in addition to thinking about how you use your money, you can obviously talk to people about what you're doing with your money. You can vote with your feet. You can also use your voice to vote for the politicians and change that you want to see. So just thinking about how is your money used? It's not really the 5% of your money that you give away in terms of donations and charitable donations. What you do with the other 95%, what sits in your bank account, in your pension, what comes in your salary, where you put your salary, whether you've got investments and savings accounts. That's what's more important. So does it just sit in a vault, inert, doing nothing? Or how does that financial provider use the money that you're entrusting to it? Does it use it to fund environmentally negative sectors like deforestation, weapons, arms, fossil fuels? Or is it investing that in real economy businesses in the UK that are having a positive impact on the environment and society? So just a little bit now about Good with Money and what we do. When we set it up in 2016, people weren't really talking about the potential for money to do good. It was a very little known sector and the connection wasn't really understood. People like Martin Lewis, set up Money Saving Expert, which is a great site, but it's very profit driven. It's all about the rate. And no consideration was given as to the impact of that rate that was offered, and actually how can those financial providers sustain those kind of rates that they are offering, and what impact does that have in a wider sense, both on society and on the environment. We set it up to help people talk about what happens to their money and the potential impact for good. We set it up to educate and to enable that shift away from the big five that I spoke about, who for many, many years have been capitalising on that inertia. What do we cover? We cover all areas of personal finance, so savings accounts, current accounts, ethical ISAs, personal loans, insurance, pensions. We've also got some kind of broader features around vegan living, for example, investing directly in hydro projects or wind turbines directly through platforms such as Triodos and FX, which I'll come on to talk a little bit about later. And actually, we've designed it, we don't want to be preachy, it's all about every little helps. We want to make it easy for your money to do good. So we provide really digestible lists, so top 10 savings accounts, top 10 current accounts. If you want to do good with your money, we review new products and new companies coming into the market. We've got a whole host of guides, kind of thinking about life stages and what you might want to consider if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, for example, how to go net zero at home. We obviously cover regular news updates, so what's happening on the news agenda and what impact might that have on greening your finances. We've got a weekly newsletter, podcast and video, and we comment as well in national media and kind of try and help shape the debate from there. we're quite active on social media as well. So it's very easy to kind of sign up, and just these little nudges to help you think differently and help you consider what else could I be doing, and just to make it easy for you. We've also got the Good Egg mark, which is an accreditation mark. Companies applying for the Good Egg have to go through a 3-step screening process. They are first assessed by us, and we think, do they meet our criteria? We then pass them on to a screening company called Ethical Screening, who do a very thorough assessment on their environmental, social and governance impact. And that then, if they get the green light from Ethical Screening, they then get passed on to our independent panel, who give them decide to award them the accreditation or not. So current Good Egg companies include Triodos Bank, which is an ethical bank, Pension Bee, which is a platform to allow you to consolidate your pensions. They also offer environmentally focused and impact focused pensions as well. Path Financial is an IFA firm. Ecology Building Society is all about green development at home and green retrofits and things like that. And the Big Exchange is part of the Big Issue. It's an investment platform that only offers impact and responsible investment funds. So the great thing is that change really is happening. When we set up Good with Money, we had like 20,000 monthly visitors, very, very small number. That's grown to about 160,000 a month now that are coming to the site to work out, to find out where they can go. And the great thing is that people are talking about it, and more people are thinking about it. People understand what it means as well, that money can have power to make an impact on the planet. So we've got some stats from Triodos. 20 million Brits plan to be more ethical with their money this year. 68% of savers want financial products that consider people and planet as well as profit, and particularly the younger demographic really are keen to move towards the ethical financial products. But the mainstream are obviously going there as well, which brings about some challenges. And you've got some great mainstream providers like Nationwide. You've got some, middling ones. So brilliant development of digital banks like Monzo and Starling, and they have made some environmental commitments and impact reporting, but really they're not going far enough. You've got big banks like Lloyds who have made significant commitments to go net zero. So you're seeing lots and lots of net zero commitments, but really the proof will be in the pudding to see how many of those organisations, those financial services firms, can really stick with the commitments that they're making. And what happens when things go mainstream is greenwash. So you've got this, this was in October last year, an advert from HSBC Bank. Climate change doesn't do borders. So in the UK, we're helping to plant 2 million trees, which will lock in 1.2 million tonnes of carbon over their lifetime. If you know anything, and you guys know more than me about this, but that's just full of holes. And they're advertising like this, greenwashing to consumers, huge big budgets, adverts here, there and everywhere, whilst they continue to invest in oil and gas extraction and expansion, coal, mining, palm oil, and so many other environmentally negative sectors. You don't only have greenwashing, of course. Companies are also green wishing. So as I spoke about before, you've got many firms, Ryanair, for example, making commitments in terms of their future carbon emissions reductions that they know that they will never be able to meet. So it's kind of making a commitment and not being able to stick with it. And then obviously you've got green hushing. So with the growing importance of impact reporting, you've got people who are just kind of trying to brush things under the carpet because they know if they were forced to provide an impact report that the reading would not be pretty. The The good thing is that green money and, you know, environmental issues and climate change is in the media now, week on week on week. Certainly when I started Good with Money, and prior to that when I was working for an ethical bank, it was very tricky to get any kind of debate going around these stories, and they tended to be focused in the very deep green publications like Ethical Consumer and Positive News, which is all very well, but it's not really bringing the change to the masses that we need. So great to see just over the last week the proposed developments with the onshore wind sector. This week is Pensions Awareness Week, so it's a great time for this talk. This weekend, we've got some very, very impactful marches. One is in New York, but there are also London and Edinburgh offshoots of those marches against fossil fuels. Coming up at the beginning of October, we've got Good Money Week, which is a challenge for us all to think again about, you know, where is our money invested? Who are we banking with? Are we happy with that? Or is it time to make the move? Obviously, you've also got Just Stop Oil, and then quite an interesting thing happening in London this weekend is the Queue for the Climate. So at the opposite end of the Just Stop Oil, there's going to be a very polite queue around the Houses of Parliament in support of anti-climate change. We've obviously got environmental issues happening day on day, the wildfires over the summer, you know, the flooding today. News this week about ports. You know, 50% of ports will be underwater by 2050 or something. I think I read. Need to check the stats on that, but yeah, it's ever growing, and hopefully inspires more and more people to think how they can engage and what they can do about it. And as I said before, money is a key step.
I'm just going to
some of those.
I'm just going to quickly pause you there. Sorry, Lisa. I was just going to say, the poll that you had, I think, was that in relation to where people think their money actually goes to.
Yes.
Now maybe a good time because Barbara can put it in the chat. So just to engage the audience a bit and get some sort of feedback on where you currently think perhaps your money goes. So yeah, Barbara, I think is gonna post that in the chat. So as Lisa carries on, feel free to take a look at the poll, and yeah, we can discuss that a bit at the end. Oh yeah, it's just popped up for me, so hopefully it's popped up for others as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on two areas. The first one is your pension. Most of us have a pension. You know, it's prompted by the government as your most serious long-term investment. The government's done an awful lot over the past few years with auto enrolment to get the UK population to actually think about their retirement income, but we don't really stop to think about where that pension money is invested. And Make My Money Matter, they're a campaign led by the film director Richard Curtis. They've done some great things over the past year in terms of challenging us to think about our pensions. And they've done some research which revealed that over each year, UK pension funds invest more than 88 billion into the fossil fuel industry, which works out around 3,000 per member each year. Obviously, think about your own pensions. Some of you won't have a huge amount, but many of you will have significantly more than 3,000 invested, and that is very much an average for the UK population. So think about that, and you know, if you're happy that such a large proportion of your money is invested in environmentally negative sectors, then it's very easy to do something about it. Those pension funds are financing 330 million tonnes of carbon emissions each year, which is 10 times more than they invest into the clean energy sector. And in 2022, just 1% of the fossil fuel industry invested in clean tech. By the way, Make My Money Matter is a brilliant resource. It's got, if you have got a company pension, and you want to know where it's invested, they've got some tips and tools and downloads to that you can use just to log on and work out. They'll help you ask the question, work out where it's invested, and then you can challenge your your employer to think about moving that money to somewhere less destructive. Banking as well, 23 million UK bank account holders that think that banks should stop funding fossil fuels. However, in the last 12 months, the big 5 UK banks have provided more than $37 billion to fossil fuels. And the big 5 provided 141 billion to the top 100 oil and gas expanders since 2016. So that's obviously since the Paris Climate Accord, COP21, all of the net zero commitments at COP26. And really the dialogue indicates one thing, the reality is very much doing the other. And time is running out, as we all know. So yeah, don't let the big banks rest on their laurels. Challenge them in terms of what they're doing with your money. It's your money. You have the choice how it is used. You just need to think about it and ask the question. If you want to know where to go for more information, I mentioned Ethical Consumer. It's very comprehensive. It provides lists of the main providers. Obviously good with money for more digestible content on the issue. Make My Money Matter has all of the resources that I've spoken about. And if you have got some money to invest and you're not confident in doing it yourself, there are obviously numbers of ready-made portfolios available on most of the main investment platforms if you are comfortable doing it yourself. If you're not, there's a bunch of ethical IFAs that we work with. So on the left of my slide is EQ Investors, Path Financial, Blue Sphere, and Ethical Futures. They all have the Good Egg accreditation. We also work with Conscious Money, Ethical Investment, Castlefield, Pennine Wealth, and then more generally is Unbiased. So it's a great platform to pop in your postcode and you can find an IFA near you. And I think they will screen by ethical options as well. So I guess my main takeaway would be, don't do anything. Just ask the question, have a little think, talk to your family and friends about it, use your vote. And then lastly, if you've done your research and you're comfortable, vote with your feet. You know, there is absolutely no reason to stick with a bank or a pension fund that you are not happy with where it's invested and how they're using your money. And that's it from me.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I saw that the votes of the poll did pop up briefly. Yes, just a reminder of, yeah, now the floor is yours, everyone, to put questions in the Q&A. I just wonder if we're able to get the, oh, there we go. Yeah, great. Okay, so the votes for the poll, 53% of people voted for the bank lends to / invest in businesses and other organizations. 27% saying lends to and invest in other financial institutions and instruments. 0% for it lends to or invests in other countries. 0% also for it's kept in a physical vault. 2% for it's an online vault. And 18% for it lends to individuals via mortgages and loans.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you're any comments on that, Lisa?
Yeah, well, banks do all of those things, but they don't keep it in a vault. They don't keep it in an online vault either. That's not the way money works. So all of these banks are using their money that they get from their customers for other things. Investing in other countries is one of the ways that they make money, and they're obviously mainly all listed on the FTSE index, or the index of their particular country where they're registered. They all have obligations towards their shareholders, so they are primarily profit driven. So they will be investing in the places that is going to make them the most money for their shareholders, which may not necessarily be best for the planet. But yeah, so they do all of those things, and I guess it's, you know, you have the choice whether you know the types of companies and organisations that your bank is lending to and whether you're happy with it. And if you're not, there are banks that keep their investments closer to home and their lending closer to home.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, I'll close the poll. So we've only got one question in so far, which I will ask now. I've got some, but yeah, please don't be shy on asking. So the first one we've got from John, who said, has HSBC and other banks, have they been taken to court or held to account over their greenwashing claims? This is something I did think earlier, actually. And to follow up, has this changed their business as usual approach? I suppose I would just say, obviously, we know that it's not just banks that are greenwashing at the moment and accused of it. I mean, many businesses are. But yes, is there any way they can be actually held accountable for perhaps lies or being misleading the public?
So that HSBC particular example, they spread the adverts far and wide, and they were upheld. A campaign group put in a claim to the Advertising Standards Agency, and that was upheld by the ASA. So I guess they are starting to be held to account. They haven't been taken to court as yet. There may be situations in the future whereby environmentally destructive industries that they are financing around the globe cause them to be held to account in other ways, and you know, there will be the chance of legal action. But at the moment, you know, they're not doing anything wrong. We think it's wrong because it's environmentally destructive, but they're not doing anything illegal that we know about. And that is the problem when they are, you know, they're uprooting indigenous peoples in the Amazon, they are deforesting in Indonesia, they are continuing to wreak havoc in, you know, in Asia through some of their, you know, dam projects that they're funding. The pressure and the legal action won't come from the consumers. It will come from, I guess, things that will happen in the environment that will cause them to be held to account.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But greenwashing is, just to tackle greenwashing in investment products specifically, so the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, which regulates financial products and all financial products, is actually introducing some requirements for investment firms to disclose their sustainability credentials that they are claiming, and that's in a bid to cut down on greenwash. So yeah, the FCA you know, has this incoming, it will probably be Q1 next year, sustainable disclosure requirements, and it will all be on the consumer. So are you aware that you are opting for this fund sector A, which invests in really dynamic and forward-moving technology companies, biotech, and you know, they've got particular sustainability credentials, or it's a fund sector B, which is kind of trying to do the right thing but not there yet, but then the power of that is in the engagement piece, or actually it's not green at all and therefore it can't be labelled green or sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, isn't it, is people knowing what to believe. So if there's actually some official ways things are recognised, that's obviously much better. Because I think general trust possibly isn't what it perhaps used to be.
No, exactly.
Got some more questions. So from James, he says, do you think / have you seen the impact of the cost of living increases on if people decide to invest more ethically? Yeah,
it's a very good question. I think yes, definitely. I think the sustainable finance sector, responsible finance, has been impacted both by the cost of living challenges, but also the performance of stock markets globally. So around the world, you know, everyone's investments, whether you're invested in the UK FTSE 100 or the NASDAQ, or you've got a broader spread of investments around the world, whether it's ESG focused or whether it's investing in fossil fuels and tobacco and those kind of sectors, markets across the globe have fallen, and as a result, equity investment funds have fallen, and that has taken the sustainability focused sector with it. I was having this conversation with someone this morning. I think they possibly have been impacted more heavily because they're concentrated in particular sectors. So a lot of it has been in the clean energy transition, for example, which has been hit particularly hard with what's happening in Ukraine and the gas prices. So yeah, very difficult. I think the point to make around the cost of living is that investing sustainably, choosing a sustainable pension, switching your bank doesn't cost you any more. Doesn't have to cost you any more at all. So yeah, there's always, for a long time, there's been a bit of an ethical premium, if you like. So if it's doing good, it's going to cost you more, or you know, you'll lose out somehow in the interest rate for some reason. But you know, for a long time that hasn't been the case. And actually, it used to be that if you chose a green energy tariff at home, for example, it was cheaper. That's not the case anymore, obviously, due to Ukraine, but hopefully it will go back that way in the future. Yeah, and the returns on sustainable investment were beating the global benchmarks, but again, that's not the case at the moment.
Right, okay. So recent conditions have, yes, it's kind of, so this one is kind of linked to this next one from John, again, is linked. So he says a lot of people would instinctively choose a bigger bank because of the perception that their money is safer. And that's actually one of the questions I'd written as well, the assumption that it's safer. How can people gain greater confidence in smaller banks that are more ethically minded? So I suppose that's linked to as well the perception that, oh, I don't want to invest in green, or I'm worried about transferring to green stuff because it's less reliable than fossil fuel industry or tobacco or whatever. So yeah, that's partly linked to what you said before, but a slightly different view on it. Yeah.
I'll tackle those two questions separately. On the safety point, all UK registered savings institutions, by that I mean banks or anyone who is offering deposit rates, have to operate under the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which covers you up to £85,000 if something were to happen to the bank. So what we had in 2008 was the run on Northern Rock, where everyone tried to get their money out, and we saw it more recently in the US with the Silicon Valley Bank. But in the UK, deposits are protected by this guarantee. And if you choose to go with a European bank as well, they are more often than not managed under a similar scheme in their own countries as well. So your money up to £85,000 would be protected. If you are looking at, you know, greater cash savings, then spread your money around. So there are several providers. I haven't really tackled today some of the Sharia compliant banks, but they, by the nature of what they offer, they don't invest in negative sectors, and they offer some great rates. So they are generally more green and more sustainable as well. Obviously, if you want to, moving on to your investment question, I think it all comes down to your personal attitude of risk, and that would be true whether you were, you know, looking at future thinking sectors or more established sectors like banks. And so, you know, a lot of the UK equity funds, for example, across green and non-green, they will be invested in the same 10 companies: Amazon, Alphabet, you know, mainly the tech companies. And again, it's just about asking the question, looking under the bonnet of the funds that you've chosen, and seeing, are you happy with those companies, and are you prepared that actually you may not think about it, and you may think that you've got a pretty stable fund, but it might all be invested in the same sector because that's where all of the fund managers are going. And that's not particularly good for your diversification, and leaves you at risk of hits, whether you're invested sustainably or not. So any questions on investment and choosing investment? We're not authorised by the FSA to give advice, but we signpost readers to authorised financial advisors who can point you in the right direction.
Okay, so I suppose in general, it's the risk associated with investing anyway kind of applies to both green and non-green.
Absolutely.
You still don't want to, essentially, what's the phrase? All eggs in one basket type thing.
Exactly. You don't want to be invested in one country, don't want to be invested in one sector. And if you don't unpick where your funds are invested, you may find that you are, quite concentrated in certain sectors anyway. So it's a good exercise, even if you're not wanting to green your money.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we've got another one from Craig. He says, from a political angle, is there a clear leader about better financial policies for environmental protection between the three main domestic parties? I mean, that's quite a difficult one, I suppose, with they're also bad at leading us astray, I suppose, in many different ways. Obviously, you can't really be too political, but I suppose, is there an opinion that any one of them support green investment more than the other?
I think Labour were going in that direction, but have backtracked over the last few weeks. They've definitely watered down their policies, and this is just from my personal take. I'm not really au fait with it all yet. But yeah, they made a number of commitments that have been watered down, I think, as they have seen that they perhaps don't need to make those concessions. So it's really difficult. Unfortunately, we don't even have three parties. We have a two-party system, and it's not great. And we need to think about, policy can do so much, and the systems change. The change that needs to happen needs to be across so many different levels. So the political system, policy change, globally, there's huge advances that need to be made. We're very privileged sitting in the global north. We don't often consider what's happening in the global south. So I've just come back from 4 years living in Thailand, and their political system, their environmental system is absolutely crazy. And, it's really difficult to see how, we're nowhere near getting it right in the UK. And yet we are supposedly much more democratic than so many other countries in the global south. So there's huge strides to make, which is really important to, feel that as an individual, you're not under any pressure to make the changes, but the more people that make a small change, the more that collective action will make a difference. And I think it's moving away from the established providers that have really built up such a huge social license, if you like. So, it's okay that Barclays is, I'm going to go to that event sponsored by Barclays Tennis, or an art show, whatever. And I just accept that they are using money because they've got huge budgets to fund these kind of events. And I'm not really thinking about the impact that attending that event, sponsored by Barclays, for example, is potentially having on the planet. So yeah, there's sadly, I don't think there is one, the only party that you could really count on to be truly sustainable would be the Green Party.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We've got lots more coming in now. So from Lee. The government are committing to green finance via all sorts of different investment schemes. Do you see this? I say committing, maybe it's claiming to. Do you see this changing the big banks' attitude as the opportunity to invest and therefore make money becomes more prevalent? I mean, are they committing to green finance?
They're making verbal commitments. They have obviously made a huge number of commitments to net zero targets for the whole country and for organisations specifically. There will be some subsidies. So I think if you look at the wind sector, those onshore wind subsidies were removed 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they're now potentially coming back in. There's a whole lot more of political instigation that needs to happen before we'll make any significant inroads to where we need to be. But we've got to be hopeful, right? We've got to hope that it will move the dial a little bit. The problem with the established providers, when you think about banks and pension funds, they've got so many legacy investments and legacy pension fund members, for example, that they can't just change. They're not agile enough to change quickly. Banks like NatWest, it's a real shame that Alison Rose has gone. She was doing great things. Lloyds have made some great commitments to net zero. HSBC and Barclays less so, and Santander is kind of in the middle, but they are moving in the right direction. But there's so much more choice. You don't have to, as I keep saying, it's about the little changes. So if you're not comfortable switching away from Barclays wholesale, you don't have to open an account with Co-op or Triodos, or even Starling, Monzo, some of the digital banks coming through. There's a number of apps coming onto the market, so that enable you to track your carbon footprint, for example, and it's an app and a debit card, and they will then make positive environmental actions as a course of you downloading that app. So there's some ideas there like Tree Card, Tread, and there are lots more in development as well. There's a platform called Sugi, SUGI, which will show you the carbon impact of your whole investment portfolio, provided you've got the information to hand. So knowledge is power, and as I said, you don't need to put all your eggs in one basket if you don't feel comfortable. If you want to retain the safety, then keep that, and then just explore what's possible. Dip your toe, I suppose, rather than, you don't have to go, I'm changing everything tomorrow. It's understandable, and equally we can't ask people to do that because everyone's got financial commitments already. There's so many factors at play, but if you don't know what's possible, then you'll never move, right? So you've just got to explore the possibilities and ask the questions.
Great, thank you. Got one from Paul, who says, given that all financial organisations exist to make profits, is the only solution to achieve a sustainable future hard regulation with real teeth? So I suppose we've sort of covered that, but it's the same with everything, isn't it? Even from my experience, down to house builders only really committing to biodiversity net gain because it's coming in as a law, that kind of thing. Do you think that's the only answer, or the only way we're going to see real change? And I suppose, how likely even is that to happen?
It has to happen. That systems change, that regulation, that policy change has to happen, but it may be a long time coming. And why not help speed it up by exploring what's possible? There are banks that exist not to make a profit. Triodos, one example. It exists purely to lend money out. It is profitable, but it's how it uses that profit rather than giving it to shareholders or paying it out in fat cat salaries, if you like. Ecology Building Society is another one. Nationwide Building Society. These organisations are run for the benefit of their members, so they are not profit driven in the same. They're not shareholder profit driven in the same way.
And some of those, say like Nationwide, there, some of the names you mentioned, they're not what I would call the new ones that people may be a bit more nervous of. They're names that we have known for a long time. Co-op as well, for example. So
yeah.
It's not just this one app or this obscure bank that no one's heard of. There are realistic, ones that people might feel more comfortable transferring to initially.
Yeah, and I think if you're not moving everything over, then it's kind of, it allows you to test the waters, and as I said before, with the financial services compensation scheme, your money is as safe with an other bank as it is with Barclays.
No, I think that's good to know as well. Yeah, that
obviously there's a cap on that guarantee, but it does exist. Co-op's an interesting one. It's always had sustainability and ethics at its heart, as the cooperative, but it came under some financial distress back in, I think, about 2012 maybe, and is now majority owned by a hedge fund. So again, there's other actors at play in how they are delivering against their sustainability objectives.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's the thing as well, isn't it? Not many people are perfect either. It's a complicated world, so
it is. And there's that saying: "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just do, do what you can, do what you feel comfortable with, and talk about it. And the more people that do that, change will happen." And we'll start to take away some of that social license that I mentioned away from the more established providers. Actually, switching away.
The point there about sort of sharing and talking about it leads us nicely to the next question from Reese, which is, thanks for a great presentation. How do we raise awareness in younger people, future generations, to ensure they can make informed choices when saving/investing money? I mean, my opinion just on finances in general in schools is that it's not very taught very well, if at all. It's such an important life skill that just seems to not on the curriculum as such, but obviously I guess a lot of it starts at home. So is there a way we can, I suppose, start ethical savings for children, or teach teenagers about this kind of thing?
It's a very sad state of affairs. You're absolutely right. Personal finance is not taught in schools at all. When I left university, I was chatting to a friend and I said, what job are you hoping to get? And he said, I'm going to be a fund manager. And I didn't have a clue what a fund manager was and what they did. It's just our money, the way we think about money and the way we talk about money in the UK is so hidden. We're very repressed when it comes to our money. And again, that works in the favour of the established institutions who want us to be inert. There's a really horrible stat which says you're more likely to get divorced than change your bank account. And I did some research recently amongst, they were all 18 to 24-year-olds, about who they banked, 18 to 34-year-olds, about who they banked with. And 99% of them banked with the same account that their parents had opened for them when they were, starting school, starting college, starting university. No one ever thinks to move. And, we get into our 30s and 40s and we might move because we need to get a mortgage with a certain provider, and that might inspire us to move. But generally, we're not thinking about it in the right way. We're not thinking about the possibilities of moving, and about the potential power of our money. I think there is education in schools. There's been a big campaign probably for about 10 years now to get personal finance education delivered more frequently in schools, largely sponsored by the mainstream providers who have the bigger budgets to deliver it. That kind of education will clearly be focused on certain principles and won't necessarily alert our young people to the fact that there are other possibilities out there. And I think there's a lot of misconception as well. So as Gen Z or baby boomers or millennials even, we have a duty to our children who will inherit this planet, and it will either be livable or unlivable for them because of our actions and because of what we're doing. We can't just leave them with this problem. So I was having this conversation with my mother-in-law, and she said, "Oh, well, I recycle and I'm trying to do my bit, but it's got to be about so much more than that." And I said, my main driving focus is for my children, and I absolutely want to imbue them with the knowledge of what climate change is and how they can deal with it. So yeah, I think, working in your sector as well, you've clearly got the knowledge, and just have the conversations, talk to your children about it, talk to your grandchildren about it, just spark that thought.
Linked to the stat there about people not changing banks and just staying with whoever their parents opened an account with. One of the questions I had in reserve was really about how easy. Well, I do know because I've looked into it. Not that I've yet changed my bank, but how easy it is nowadays to change banks. Whereas I think there's this perception that it's a right hassle or it's unsafe, or that's why people don't do it. I think, because even if they considered it, they think, oh, I can't be bothered with that. Obviously, there's been a lot more incentivization from banks of, oh, join us and get £200 free, or all that kind of, someone in the Q&A's actually just mentioned about referral bonuses. You see those as well. So yeah, is it the case that it is actually a very simple thing to do, to change your bank, even if you're just talking about your current account, where your salary goes, where your main bills come out of, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and there is the perception that it's tricky and that direct debits are going to go astray. We might want to ask where that perception has come from and who perpetuates that. Again, largely the established providers. There is now the switching guarantee, so switches have to be completed within a certain time frame, and any bank not completing the switch properly will be liable for any monies that go awry. It's a lot easier than you think. It's a lot less time consuming than you think. And I think we've all become conditioned to think, oh God, I've got to switch energy provider, I should really switch my bank. I'm thinking about my children's investments at the moment, and I really need to find the time to do something about them and check that I'm happy with where they are. But we just don't have the time. As soon as you've done it, you think, why didn't I do that sooner? It took me no time at all. It was dead easy. An
interesting one's just come through, actually, again linked to this, was from Jessica. Says, does it affect your credit rating to change banks? It's one thing that puts me off. I hadn't thought about that, actually, but that's quite a good point. Especially I don't know, say my age group or younger people that think, oh, I know how important a credit score is for future mortgages, that kind of thing. So yeah, are there any downsides to moving your money around? Or again, is that a misconception?
I would have to check on that. I'm not 100% sure. I think that yes, it potentially can, if you are the type of person who is opening multiple bank accounts, multiple savings accounts, that will leave that imprint, which may then in the future have a negative impact. If you are moving from one bank account to another, or for example, opening a second debit card, opening one credit card, actually, the perception is that you are a better credit rating if you have more than one financial product, because it means that someone else has lent to you. So if you have one credit card, if you have a mortgage, that boosts your credit rating. But so on kind of, I think regularly switching is not necessarily a good idea. And we've perhaps been led to do a lot of that over the last 10 years with the likes of Money Supermarket and those price comparison websites and Martin Lewis. And yeah, you switch to Nationwide because they've got £200 referral bonus, but actually long term it may not be the best thing to do.
Okay, so it's I suppose it's regardless of whether you're switching to a more green provider or not, there's sort of the general principles around credit rating that apply anyway. Of you've got too many things open, it's not great. And like you say, credit rating is a whole nother thing, and there is a lot of information out there about what does and doesn't affect it. Okay, thank you.
I'm not an expert, but I think if you go to somewhere like Experian or even System Advice Bureau, then they have a lot better information on credit rating and its potential impacts.
So that's it in the questions in the Q&A. I think of the questions I'd prepared, I've got one more, I think. So regarding pension companies, so I've changed jobs a few times, I've got a few different pension pots, so I am at the stage of looking at, say, pension B and going, what can I amalgamate in things, and where is it going? One question that I've got is, with the pension companies, you get put on often a standard package, a mixed investment or whatever. If you were to email them or say, I want to know where this is going, do they have an obligation to tell you where things are going? Because I've heard stories of people asking the questions and not getting the answers back from these pension investors. So is it becoming more common that they will share that information? Do they actually legally, or do they have an obligation to share that? Because I think a lot of people feel powerless against these big corporations to ask the question in the first place.
Yeah, I think definitely ask the question, do your research. All providers of any investment have a duty to share the top 10 investments within their particular fund, or so within the default fund, for example. Other companies go further and do highlight their whole portfolio, and will update you quarterly when there are significant portfolio changes. It will become more of an implication. There is the consumer duty, which has just come in, which puts the onus on providers to be very clear and transparent and not misleading in any of the information that they provide. So if you come up against a brick wall when you challenge your existing providers, then you can just say, well, you're not fulfilling my consumer duty, so you need to give me this information.
Again, hopefully something that's changing for the better.
Again, look at Good with Money. We'll give some highlights over what's available. Look at Make My Money Matter for more specific actions that you can take, certainly on the employee pension side. Ethical Consumer, it is subscription, but they regularly publish kind of top lists. And I've been looking at our company pension for another business that I'm involved in at the moment, and it's actually, there's a great and growing selection of well-established providers like Aviva, like Legal & General, Royal London, big huge names that perform well in terms of sustainability in pensions.
Right, that's I think a lot of it is people feeling empowered to even ask the question in the first place, because you just your pension comes out and often you don't really think about what it's doing, where it's going.
You don't, and all of these processes are designed to keep us where we are and not asking the questions that that we need to ask. Just the other thing on Pension B as well, it's great that you mentioned that, because they're a new style of platform. and their business is to consolidate your pensions. Certain people may want to seek advice as to whether it's the right thing financially to consolidate existing pots. But if you do decide that that's the right thing that you want to do, PensionBee is very easy, and they manage the whole process for you. And they have got 2 sustainable fund options that you can move your money into. They've got one which is managed by BlackRock, so I would just caution on that one, but one of the other ones isn't.
Right, okay. Okay, I think, well, we're at past, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you to everyone that's still on the call, that's hung around. Thank you for joining in the first place. Thank you very much to Lisa for taking the time to present to us today and answer all the questions. If anyone's got any further questions or thoughts after this webinar, I think, Lisa, you're happy for people to get in touch with you via Good With Money.
Good With Money, or email if it's something specific. Fine with that. You'll find us on all the social channels as well, so just give us a question.
Great. All right. So thank you very much, everyone, and hopefully see you at a future CIWEM event soon.